So, how many people here will A, tell the truth, and B, admit to playing Farmville? Okay, so like a room filled with liars, okay? I went to Catholic school in Ireland, right? They taught us how to spot this shit. So Farmville was a really annoying game that came out, what, late 2009, early 2010, produced by a studio called Zynga. And as the image here suggests, it's a farm management game. So you would plant crops, and you would milk your cows, and you would generate revenue, and you would expand your farm, and like a world builder game, right? There's tons of them out there. And the way that you kind of accrued influence to do this was you invited your friends. So be like, oh, ask your friends to help you pick your strawberries, right? So you would invite your friends, and you would get additional picks, and you could do more, and your strawberries wouldn't kind of wither on the vine, which is kind of mixing metaphors. But so you could invite all your friends, right? And this was, you know, what they now call growth hacking. Equally as odious then. So that's what this led to. So if anyone remembers 2010-ish, this was most of your Facebook newsfeed, right? It was just like nonstop. This is happening on Farmville. This person needs your help to harvest their strawberries. This person needs, you know, your help. They've struck gold, et cetera, right? It was just super, super irritating. And some people really, really hated it. So, and they got really creative about it. So they would build, and this is minor, right? This is like the PG-rated version of what I could find. So they would build these like incredible odes to how much they hated this game. And it became like a real conversation, right? 2010, a bunch of people sitting around talking about giving out about Farmville. And myself and some friends sat in a bar called Bruxelles, which Mark in the front row will remember. An amazing place in Dublin, where I'm from, drinking a few of these, talking about how rubbish Farmville was and how much it annoyed us. We sat there and we kind of thought, what if there was a way to fuck with people who played Farmville? Right? Like, why can't we mess around with people? Why can't we do really, really horrible things? Like, why is there no mischief element in here? Why is it not more fun? Why is it so spammy? And so we came up with an idea. So we came up with this idea called Farmville, right? Which was a way to screw with people who played Farmville. So in Farmville, you milked your cows, you harvested your strawberries, and everything was wonderful. In Farmville, you gave your neighbor's cows mad cow disease. You salted the earth on their land, you burnt down their barns, you did all of these horrible things, right, which you can see in the screen here. Add cowbell, you can do all of these kind of things. And it kind of launched as a joke, right? It's like, oh, send it out to a bunch of people, see what happens. And, you know, like it wasn't, to describe it as a game would be doing a disservice to almost every game that's ever been developed. It was like a post on a wall, but it went viral, right? So it went from a couple of people that we knew to a couple of more people that we knew to a bunch of people that we didn't know to eventually a couple of million people that we'd never met. And we were getting like fan mail and like this huge Facebook community and all this. Like people loved it, and that was where the line, the South Park of Facebook came in, right? Which is still, I think, probably the coolest thing that anyone's ever written about me. And even, I mean, it wasn't entirely about me. There were a lot of other co-founders involved. But 2010, like no one had really figured out social media, right? And so we went and talked to a bunch of VCs, and they were like, this is literally the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You are a fucking idiot, like, get out. I'm like, I guess. Until we went to talk to a friend of mine who worked at GameStop. So they had opened their digital arm in Ireland for a variety of reasons, including tax. And so, I mean, I'm honest as well, right? Catholic school. So we talked to them, and he was like, this is the dumbest idea ever. You guys are idiots. And yet somehow you figured out how to make money from social media. Because the thing that we did as soon as we got to like 50,000 users was like every good entrepreneur was like, let's just put some ads in, right? And back in 2010, ads on Facebook actually made a significant amount of money. And so we were looking at these numbers coming in going, this seems great. So we sold it to the GameStop guys, and they were like, this seems amazing. And they ended up acquiring the business. And there's a whole other story behind that we can talk about over drinks later on, and Chatham House rules apply to those. So came out of that business and worked with a bunch of other people, including a great Canadian company, Keep. I don't know if anyone here knows Brian Wong. So a rewards network rewards you for your achievements in games and apps instead of showing you shitty ads. And so worked with them and helped them scale their business into Europe and the Middle East and into Asia. So opened our office in London and in Tokyo and worked with a couple of great brands and partners to scale that business. and kind of got involved in Techstars as a result. So when I started my first company in Ireland, there were no mentors or advisors, right? There were a bunch of people who would look for 5% of your company in return for like introducing you to one person who was already their mate and was probably going to take one of the 5%. So I always remember the people who helped, right? The people who answered the phone, or the people who looked at contracts and said, don't do it that way, or the people who listened to a 5-minute pitch and said, you're wrong, you need to think about it this way. I always thought if I can ever help people out, I will. And so around that time, Techstars announced that it was coming to Europe, and I got introduced to the guy, John Bradford, who brought it over, became a mentor on the program, and kind of kept working with them over and over and over again, and eventually they fell for it and offered me a job. And so I've been involved with them for like 5 or 6 years now, and have been kind of angel investing. And so, I mean, I'll talk about a bunch of these companies. This is a bit of my portfolio. I think I've invested in about 25 or 28 companies now. 28, 3 of them don't exist anymore. So Techstars most of the time. AccelerateOTT is an AI fund out of Asia that I help out. Linguist is a language learning service, if anyone wants to, and I'll talk a little bit about them a little bit later on. But these are some of the people, and it's everything from brewing beer faster to artificial intelligence. So it's a pretty broad swathe. And the commonality, right, is everyone wants this. The thing that we accidentally got with Farmville is what everyone wants, right? The massive J-curve, huge success, all of these kind of things. I mean, the reality of actually starting a business is way different, right? It's much more like this, which we'll hopefully start playing around about now. Yes. So you get your TechCrunch of initiation, everyone's super excited, and then the wearing off of novelty, things are no longer quite as much fun, the trough of sorrow, releases of improvement, right? The crash of ineptitude, your wiggles of false hope, and maybe, if you're lucky, right, an acquisition and a liquidity upside, right? Most companies kind of end around the crash of ineptitude, sadly, like 90% of companies. But there are ways to kind of cheat and get around some of these things, right? And the reality is this is an amazing time to be starting a company, right? This was the first website that CERN published 24 years ago. Right, you know, we're only 9 years into kind of iOS, Android, the mobile revolution. We're still in the early days of AI, IoT, all of these kind of other things. So I don't think there's ever been a better time to start a company, which leads me nicely into my shameless plug for my day job. So what is and I'll be really short with this, and then we'll get to the good stuff. So Techstars is a network that helps entrepreneurs. How do you do that, you ask? Well, we do a whole bunch of different things. So has anyone here ever done a startup weekend? Cool. Everyone should do a startup weekend, right? It's an amazing experience where you come in with an idea over 54 hours, you work on your idea with a group of your friends or with a group of strangers. Great way to find a co-founder for a business if you need a technical co-founder, design help, business help, anything like that. So we run those in 160 countries around the world. We've had about 150,000 people go through Startup Weekend. Startup Digest is an email digest that comes out every week. Startup Week, as the name suggests, is a week that celebrates startups, where we bring in corporates, people from around different cities can go in and meet startups, see how it all works, and get excited for it. So we've done that in about 20 or 30 cities around the world. And we run accelerator programs. We now have, I think, 28 of them around the world, including most recently one which we announced in Toronto. So we'll be opening applications for that in like July or August, and it'll kick off in January of next year. We work with lots of big corporates, some of the biggest in the world. I won't labor the point, but how it works, we give people $120,000 in funding. We put them through a 3-month kind of boot camp where we introduce them to tons and tons of mentors. We help them work on their product, strategy, marketing, design, kind of you name it. We introduce them to a bunch of investors, and it all culminates in a big demo day where everyone comes out and says how incredible they are. We have about 5,000 mentors in our network around the world. You know, some of the smartest people I've ever been lucky enough to meet, and also people like me who hopefully you'll never be lucky enough to meet. And by the numbers, we've done pretty well. So we've been doing it for 10 years. We've now had over 1,000 companies. This number is slightly out of date as of last week. So we've got over 100 companies have graduated, 100 classes have graduated. We've had about 120 companies acquired, about 100 have failed, so we've got a pretty good strike rate in terms of companies still in existence, and a cumulative portfolio value of about $8 billion. We also have a VC fund that invests in lots of people. You can talk to me about this stuff later if you want. This is the stuff that should be interesting. So here are some of the mistakes that I made, and some lessons I've learned, and some stuff that I think is hopefully reasonably interesting, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. So I carry one of these books around with me all the time, right? How many people here are entrepreneurs? How many people are like actually in a business? Okay, and how many people want to start a business? Okay. How many people carry a notebook? Okay, good. the paper is not dead yet. So I mean, it can be Evernote, right? Who cares? Somewhere to keep notes. I keep one of these beside my bed as well because I do wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes going, wait, that's, usually they're not the greatest ideas ever, but taking note of them is a useful kind of habit to get into. So I take notes all the time. It's really, really useful. Sometimes, and I read my old notebooks, like not because I have a gigantic ego, but sometimes there's something that I thought of 5 years ago that's probably applicable now and it's disappeared from my head. Many people have read a book in the last 6 months. You'd be terrified how often I ask that. And it's like, oh no. The first question I ask in interviews is, what are the, what's the last book you read? What are the websites you visit every morning? What's your favorite source of news, et cetera, et cetera. And you'd be amazed, like I interviewed a guy a couple of weeks ago, it was like, oh, so what's your favorite website? He said, oh, it's Google. I was like, okay, which is, to be fair, I kind of get it, but it wasn't quite the answer I was looking for. And when I pressed him on it, it didn't really go very much further than that. So neither did the interview. So that job is still open if anyone's looking. Seriously, this is like my #1 job is recruiting for companies. So read all the time, right? Read books, read TechCrunch, read Hacker News, join Slack channels, get involved in all sorts of places where you can find interesting information, right? I read voraciously. I'm subscribed to, I don't know how many channels on Facebook and Twitter and all of these kind of places about entrepreneurship in Thailand and India, like you name it. I'm just fascinated by this world, this ecosystem, this industry that we're all lucky enough to work in and be passionate about. How many people have had an idea that was so amazing that if you told anyone, they would immediately quit their job and rob it from you? Okay, so again, a lot of people lying here, right? So I'll be honest, right? I had that idea. I was like, I can't even tell an investor because they're going to leave their massively lucrative VC job and go and start an idea that only I was smart enough to start. No, right? Tell people your ideas, right? Talk about your ideas. Talk about the problems that you're having. Talk about the solutions that you've found. Help people out. It's really, really important, right? Because someone once told me, with the best ideas you ever have, there's already 10 other people working on those ideas, and they're all smarter than you are, right? And the difference is if you talk, if you communicate, if you seek advice, if you kind of go out there and solicit information from people, it is a great way to learn. Here is something else that you should do. When you talk to people, you should listen to the things that they say back to you, right? Mind explosion, right? I know, this is like 101 stuff. But again, I talk to entrepreneurs every single day. And I'm not saying I'm an oracle, right? I'm not the smartest person in any room I've ever been in, and I'm frequently in rooms of my own, right? But, and it amazes me, you kind of go, oh, well, yeah, we invested in a company that did something like that before, and they tried X, Y, and Z. A person just kind of blithely ignores what I'm saying and continues with kind of this barrage of information, right? So listen to what people have to say. It turns out actually sometimes they can be incredibly useful. When you're talking to people about your company, it's not a pitch, right? Like you shouldn't be kind of just blah, 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 bombarding me with information. Like if I ask you questions, or if I offer something that seems kind of useful or a helpful piece of information, don't just use that as an excuse to then restart your pitch all over again, right? If we're talking a little bit later on, you want to tell me about your company, please do not give me a 5-minute pitch, right? And I'll talk a little bit about that in a couple of minutes. Like give me a succinct version of what you do, and then go, ask me an open question. Sorry, you have to remember the next slide, right? So the default setting for a lot of entrepreneurs is to go, hi, I'm building an Uber for dog walking. A lot of people own dogs, and Uber is very successful. What do you think of my idea, right? And what's your answer, right? Because I'm a nice guy, so I'm not going to go, that's shit. You go, oh, okay. It's like, oh, now I have to use the bathroom all of a sudden, and like people have weak kidneys if you go to enough startup events. But like ask open questions, right? The #1 thing that we did when we were trying to get into new markets with Keep was we would go and sit in a room with ad agency or brand X, and the question I would always ask is, what are the things that keep you awake at night? Like what are the 3 things that you worry about when you wake up every morning? Or what are the 3 things that annoy you when you're out for dinner with your friends or having a beer with your friends? And how can I help you solve them, right? And what are you doing there? You're building a relationship, right? You're not like pitch, 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 you're opening the door, you're finding out information from them. How are you currently solving this problem? Like use the opportunity that you have to ask people questions to draw information out of them, right? And that can be an investor, it can be a business prospect, it can be anyone, right? Ask open questions. Asking closed questions is just dumb, 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 dumb. It's not worth it. Some basic stuff to think about. So scratch itches that you have, right? So if you think about the dumb example I gave a minute ago, right? I will, not invest in Me Too ideas, right? So if someone comes along and goes, Uber is huge, so therefore on-demand is huge. Also, a lot of people own dogs, and dogs like to be walked, so I started an Uber for dog walking, right? How many people think that's a good idea for a company? And then you sit in a room with them and you go, hey, do you own a dog? The guy goes, no. You're like, okay, this doesn't feel like something that's valid. Scratch itches that you face every day, right? I love talking to companies where it's someone who goes, I've been a lawyer for 20 years, and every day it annoyed me that you couldn't solve this. And so I went to a startup weekend, or I talked to a friend of mine who's an engineer at company X, and we put together this very basic MVP, and we solved it, right? That's a company, right? If you're scratching an itch that you have, and you can figure out that there's a couple of other people that have that itch, you're on the way to building a company. If you're just doing something because lots of other people are doing it, it seems cool, right? That's kind of lemming behavior, and that's not good, right? So scratch itches. Figure out what your unfair advantage is, right? If you're going to launch a video editing solution and your experience is you've been to see the new Star Wars film like 25 times, that's not. Whereas if you've got 20 years editing experience in the industry and you know everyone, that's an unfair advantage, right? We invested in a company called Swift Comply in London recently. Swift Comply are, as the name suggests, a company that is involved in compliance, but in fat, oil, and grease compliance, right? So restaurants in cities around the world obviously have to monitor how much fat, oil, and grease they dump, and they get rid. Well, they're not supposed to dump it, which is why they have to monitor it. And so these guys created a solution for cities to use and for restaurants to use to track this, right? The guy who built it had been working, and when we were interviewing, it was like, why did you do this? He's like, I've been working in fat, oil, and grease for 15 years. It's like, I'm never ever going to hear that sentence again, right? Like, I mean, maybe, I don't know, but unbelievable unfair advantage, right? Pretty much the only person in the world, I think may yet become one of the more successful companies we've ever invested in, right? Because who's going to compete again? Like, who's going to go, oh, do you know what would be cool? I'm going to do fat, oil, and grease compliance. I read a article on The Atlantic about it. No, right? Figure out what your unfair advantage is. These are some hygiene things, right? So we'll skip through them pretty quickly. But of the people who have startups here, is there anyone who is not listed on all of these sites? Okay, so 3 or 4 people. That's your homework. Okay, no beer until then, right? Seriously, you do need to be on here. Like when we're doing due diligence on companies, these are the places that we look. We look in these places as well, right? Need to see that your product is real, that it's kind of listed in, with the right people, right place, right information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And I mean, this is not an exhaustive list. I mean, obviously, there are local blogs, local media, all of these places that you should be considering. And I mean, also like Product Hunt, Beta List, Startup List, Hacker News. If you go on ShowHN, you can find out if, other people are doing your idea. So go and look for fat, oil, and grease. You'll find one listing. But these are, like, seriously, if you are starting a company, like, this is actually a hygiene factor at this point. And these are just interesting to kind of, and also, I mean, this comes back to reading all the time, right? You should be aware of what other people are doing and what the wider industry is doing. Any solo founders? Okay, it's tough, right? I've done it, and it sucks. Try and find a great co-founder if you can. And I know it's hard to find technical co-founders, or it's hard to find all sorts of different people, but I would recommend trying to make the effort. And the difference that it will make for an early employee being classed as a co-founder is, an order of magnitude difference in terms of their engagement with the company and engagement with you and engagement with others, right? So find a Larry or a Sergey, right? You don't want to be like the Twitter guys, basically like gigantic kind of Roman orgy of backstabbing for the last 10 years. So find great co-founders, right? It is tricky, but it is worth it. I would say on every Techstars program, so we take 10 companies into every program, probably at least 1 and usually 2 companies will have a co-founder breakup, right? And it's probably been exacerbated over the last 5-7 years, I would say, because we get a lot of teams who've come in who've met remotely, right? So they've kind of connected on a Slack channel or on a group somewhere, and they've never actually worked together. And then they come to New York for Techstars, and they have to live in a studio apartment together for 3 months, and their feet are touching when they're sleeping, and they're working together all the time. Turns out they actually don't like each other very much, right? So you do get conflicts, and even with companies that have been together for a very long time, you can find conflicts. Like, we always talk about team team, product, market, idea being the order in which we judge companies at Techstars, and it's true, right? You know, when we're talking to teams, we look at how long have people known each other, how well do they know each other, right? There's a reason why, you know, Israeli companies do really well for a whole bunch of reasons. One of the reasons is the co-founder cohesion is, you know, usually they've served together, right? So if you've seen military service or gone through boot camp with someone, you can probably put up with the fact that they coded, you know, they deployed some shitty code that, you know, the previous day. So finding a great co-founder is really, really key, and it will, from a mental health perspective, help you immeasurably as well. And alongside that, surround yourself with great people. You know, one of the investment panel talked about it a little bit earlier, like, you know, when you're bringing investors on board, do your due diligence on them, right? I talked to a company the other day who'd raised $300,000 for 36% of the company, right? So when you do the math on that, it means that they effectively can't really do any more rounds of funding without sacrificing total control of their business, right? They'll no longer own a controlling interest in the company once they do their second round of funding, right? So they signed with shitty, and I see this literally all of the time, right? Ridiculous, and it's, in fairness, it's the investors who are the bad guys in this, but do your due diligence on the people that you're bringing on board as investors. Do your due diligence, you know, if you're thinking of applying for Techstars or YC or 500 or, you know, any program that's out there, like, do your due diligence on the people who are involved, right? Figure out, are they, you know, if you're going to apply for a Techstars program, we've got 28 of them, and if your company is an ed tech company, you probably don't want to apply to our alcohol accelerator, right? You know, figure out who you should be. And so this also applies to advisors and board members and mentors, right? Having the right people, right? I mean, obviously everyone knows who this is, right? The reason, like, Dumbledore was a good mentor, right? And like, I've never talked like this before. The reason Dumbledore was a great mentor is that, you know, he let Harry make his own mistakes, right? He didn't jump in and interfere or any of those kind of things. So you want mentors who will be there, who will be at the end of a phone, who will be at the end of, you know, WhatsApp message, anything else, who will be able to help you out. You want advisors who will be able to help you out. You want board members who are actively engaged in your company and interested in what you're doing, right? And you should not be afraid to part with equity to get those people. I'm not saying give them like 0.5%, you know, for being nice to you, you know, but work with someone for 2 or 3 months if they're providing value. And a mentor or advisor, you're talking about, you know, 15, 20 minutes a week, maybe a little bit more regular, you know, once a month you meet them for an hour and have a conversation. But people like that can be the difference between your company succeeding and failing, right? So surround yourself with amazing people, and the people that you recruit, and the people that help your business, and the people that invest in your business. When we did Farmville, we were doing the iOS app. And there was a Chuck Norris character in the iOS app, and sent it off to Apple for submission. We got this email back, and they were like, you know, are you sure? So we published the app. And about 3 or 4 days later, we got an email from Chuck Lawyer's attorneys. Turns out Chuck takes his image rights extremely seriously. And he did not like being part of our satirical play on Farmville. So we got sued. I mean, one of several times I've been sued. Thankfully, none of them won in the end. But when you are starting a company, and this is really serious stuff, like I'm going through this with a company at the moment where there has been a co-founder breakup. They didn't get a founder's agreement in place in time. And so now the co-founder who's leaving theoretically still owns about 20% of the company, for a reason I will touch on in a moment. If they'd had a founder's agreement, this wouldn't have happened, right? So paying for lawyers is painful, but I guarantee you it's a lot less painful than the shit that can happen when you don't. And likewise, also a lot of lawyers like Cooley, Wilson Sonsini, a lot of firms will work for free. They'll defer payment until your company gets to a certain stage. So, you know, see if you can work those deals with legal firms, right? I mean, obviously, you know, it's deal flow for them, and if your company turns out to be mega successful, they'll hopefully make a pile of money from you. But like, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, how many people have downloaded documents off the internet and kind of gone, yeah, we'll use that, okay? Yeah, nope, right? I mean, it works, but it's like a patina of protection rather than actual protection. So seriously, think about getting a lawyer. And this is the other thing. How many people know what vesting is? Okay, so when you start a company, or when you create a company, or when you become an employee of a company, you get X amount of shares in a company. Let's say it's 10%, right? When you start raising investment, or when you start kind of taking the company seriously, you should put together a vesting schedule, which means that you don't just own that 10%, you have to wait a while, right? And so usually vesting schedules are 3 or 4 years with what they call a 1-year cliff. So after 1 year, If it's a 4-year vesting schedule, you'll own 2.5% of the company, and then over time, you'll increase in increments of 1/36th every month for the next 3 years, or 1/24th every month for the next 2 years, depending on how long the schedule is, right? But this is really, really important. The company that I'm describing, if they'd put a proper vesting schedule in place, this wouldn't be an issue because the other co-founder would be entitled to diddly squat from the company, but because they didn't, he still theoretically obviously owns a significant percentage of it. So learn about vesting. You'll need to know about it anyway. Like when you hire people, you'll give them options. Those options will vest over 3 or 4 years. With Snapchat, they do it smartly. They do reverse vesting, so you get tiny amounts every month for 36 months, and then you get the big chunk after 3 years. So it's an employee retention way of doing things. But again, and I'll talk about like knowing lingo when you're talking to VCs, but this is just from your own personal protection point of view, it's very, very important. So let's talk about products. This is anyone get the joke? Please don't be a chocolate teapot is the joke. So when you have a product that you're thinking about building or that you've built or that's already at 100 million users, you should be doing this, right? You should constantly be wireframing, prototyping, testing, talking to users, getting feedback, and doing it over and over and over again in a loop, right? No product is ever, it's interesting, like Facebook, the Next Web has a reporter in New Zealand, and effectively his job is to report on all the shit that Facebook is going to introduce in about 6 months, right? So they test all of their new products in Ireland and New Zealand because they think they're so small and so far away from everyone else that actually if they test something and it doesn't work out, no one will care. I'm from Ireland and my wife is from New Zealand, so it's like seriously harsh. But like the biggest companies in the world do this, and you should too. So how many people can't start their company because they don't have a developer? 1, 2, 3. Okay, so when Keep raised the first $250K from angels and from True Ventures, Brian had a clickable PDF that kind of looked like it worked, but actually was literally a clickable PDF, right? These are tools that even the most design incompetent of us, and I count myself amongst those, can use to create a clickable prototype that makes it look like your product works, right? Pop is something where you can literally draw on a piece of paper, take photographs of it, and animate those pieces of paper, right? Now, obviously, I'm not going to invest in your company if you do that, but you can then graduate, you can at least test it out, right? You can go to people, oh, that's a really dumb idea, or that looks ugly, or whatever. But you can go to Keynotopia, which is a piece of software which works in Keynote and PowerPoint, and you can take design elements from other products, whack it into that, and it's like putting together a PowerPoint slide deck, right? Or Keynote slide deck. And you can add clickable transitions and everything else, and it looks, to all intents and purposes, like you've built something that kind of works. Fluid UI, Marvel, Proto.io, or other kind of tools that you can use to very simply create something that looks like it works. And this is important for 2 reasons, right? One, if you come to me and go, I have the best idea in the world, here it is, the ink is wet on the back of the napkin, can I have some money? How many people think the answer is going to be yes, right? And like maybe if like Mark Zuckerberg came along and was like, oh, here's what I'm thinking of doing next. Although his idea that he wanted to do instead of Facebook, the Warthog, this music sharing thing, right? He had one good idea. So, but if you come to me and you go, I made this with Keynotopia, it at least shows me that you're willing to put in some of your time. Like, if the only investment of time you're willing to make is sending me an email and asking for money, then I don't think you're taking this very seriously. If you're willing to actually learn a new skill, then I think you're probably going to take this reasonably seriously. So these tools serve to allow me to understand that you're kind of serious about this stuff, but also, if you're going and you're looking for co-founders or technical co-founders or anyone else, being able to show them what you're trying to do, rather than explain it to them, is really important, right? Show me stuff, don't tell me about it. It's like, it's very, very unexciting to look at, like, I got a pitch from someone the other day who's building a business that's really interesting, but the pitch was like a hardcover book. It was about 25 slides of just text. I was like, this is really not very good at all. And then he sent me, he was like, oh, but we've made this video. If you look at the video, it's like, this is fucking incredible. Like, just send the video to people from now on, right? And we'll talk about why in a minute. But this is a great quote, right? Like, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of what you did, you've launched it too late. So I'm going to skip through the rest because we don't have an awful lot of time. User onboarding, this is a great site. Like, learn from the mistakes that other people have made. Other people make lots of mistakes. This will teach you how not to do it, particularly with regard to onboarding new users. This is incredible. If you have an idea, this is how to get 5 minutes worth of free feedback from someone you don't know. Right? Don't ask your friends for feedback on your idea because they're positively biased towards you. They're going to go, oh yeah, yeah, Eamonn, your idea is brilliant, because it's much easier than them going, that's really rubbish. Right? They're probably going to have to go for dinner with you at some stage, or have a beer with you, or have any sort of social interaction. So getting feedback from real people is key. If you want $500 up to $5,000 from some friends and I, here are 2 websites that you should visit. I'll share this deck with you a little bit later on. But we give people money for doing good customer development experiments. So it's kind of like that lean startup stuff. So, and if you ever go to South by Southwest, we hand out cash for experiments there as well, like customer development experiments as opposed to other ones that could get us into trouble. When you're building your product and you're thinking about really scaling it, make it fast. This is really, really important, right? If you build something that is slow, I can tell when someone's built a cross-platform app, right? I get sent so many products all the time now. I'm like the little kind of spinning circle. It's like, I know what happened here. And it's expensive to build native apps, right? But the difference that we've seen from companies when they go native in terms of the speed, user retention, all of these things is huge, right? This is Instagram. And one of the reasons, I mean, there were many reasons why Instagram took off when it did. But one of the reasons was when you took a photograph and you went in to kind of add your info, oh, here's my avocado on toast or whatever else, they started uploading it straight away at that point, so that when you hit the share button, it was like, holy shit, it's magic, it's already on the internet. But what they were doing was uploading it all the time that you were kind of going, oh, will I share this on Twitter or Facebook, or what hashtag will I use? Right, it was already uploaded. When you use Flickr and lots of other apps, it started uploading after you click share, and it was like, God, this takes ages. It's like wading through molasses, right? So make your product as fast as you can. We did it with Linguist a while ago. We built native apps, fully native iOS and Android apps, and it's made an unbelievable difference to our user engagement, retention, all of the numbers that you could care to think about. Make your stuff really simple. This is a company we invested in called DrinkEasy. DrinkEasy sends you recommendations like a pocket sommelier. So it says, oh, we think you like this whiskey, and you just reply, hell yes, if you want to buy it. Right? Like, and it's text, SMS, or WhatsApp, SMS, Facebook Messenger, all these kind of things. So make it very simple, like Buffer. If anyone's ever used Buffer, it's just a little thing that sits in the corner. You click it, and it allows you to share, save it for later, or share it to social media, like Instapaper, all these things. Make it super simple for people to use. Can you remove friction? A couple of years ago, someone came to me with this great pitch. They said, moving into an office is painful. It's really horrible leasing office space. It takes ages. You've got to sign 1-year leases. You've got to get the internet. You've got to pay for all of the charges from the municipality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What if there was a way that you could just rent office space whenever you needed it, wherever you needed it? And I was like, that's fucking brilliant, right? Unfortunately, that business is not called WeWork, but it is the same model. Remove friction from the process of actually renting space, allowed you to do it in a very, very simple way, and became, WeWork is obviously hugely profitable. Business I invested in, not quite so profitable, but still a great company. That was sad, actually, that day. Tell your users what you want them to do, right? The atomic unit of Snapchat is sharing photographs. So when you go into the app, what's the first thing they let you do? Right, share photographs. Like, I see so many badly designed apps where it's like, when you open it, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, here's a sneaky little secret, right? Most people are idiots, right? Like, they need to be kind of led down the garden path in terms of what you want them to do, unfortunately. And especially with apps. Like, if you open something and the UI is confusing, it's like, and you've got like about 2 or 3 seconds to make an impression, right? And if you don't, then done, I'm out, right? A few final thoughts. I'm way over time, am I? Okay, I'll talk quick for these ones. Make your story simple, right? If you're going to pitch me something, don't tell me that you're going to disintermediate the artisanal market in the MENA region, right? Who knows how they pitch movies? It's like Jaws, but in space, right? Alien. It's Die Hard on a bus, right? Like, make it really simple for me, because again, I'll see, for our program that we did with AB InBev, I saw nearly 1,000 applications, right? So like I'm not that smart. Think of what you're doing as a movie teaser, right? Leave me wanting more. Like, don't give me all of the information. Don't give me a 25-page slide deck with like reams and reams and reams of text on it, giving me every possible permutation of your future company. Send me the video and make me go, really want to have a call with this person. I want to learn about what they're doing. I'm excited for what they're up to. Learn how to be personal, right? Build relationships with people. If anyone here wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, has anyone here tried to connect with me on LinkedIn already? Okay. If I get that, no. right? Not happening. Why do you want to? Hey, Eamonn, I saw you speak at Accelerate Ottawa. I thought it was really boring, but here's some tips, right? Delete. No, I would accept that actually. I think like that's brazen, it's good. But be personal, right? If you're going to send, do your research. This comes back to the kind of due diligence stuff I was talking about a little bit earlier on. Don't be a mass mailer. I need to take this thing out before I share it with you, but this is a guy who emailed me the other day. We're making this, blah, 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 blah. I'd never met this person before, right? Never, didn't even know who he was. Still don't know how he got my email address. I was wondering if you could advise us on early stage VCs who would be interested in EdTech. I was like, oh, yes, what else am I doing? Like, I literally have nothing better to do than reply to every person who emails me and introduce them to all of these VCs that I've literally spent the last 15 years of my life getting to know, right? The VCs who I'm friendly with, I might email them 10 times a year, and I have a big portfolio, so like, don't be a mass mailer. Be flattering. This is Brian. We got investment from American Express by just being nice. You're inspiring, leading the charge, and building at the world's freshest financial everything company. Be nice to journalists. I know you're going to have Amber up in a couple of minutes, but be really, really nice to journalists. This is some coverage we got from Linguist this week, which got about 60,000 new users. These 2 links will give you great examples from journalists of how to pitch them, but be really, really nice to journalists. Like I'm with Bill Gates. I would spend my last dollar on PR every single day of the week. It has over-delivered and over-indexed in user acquisition for almost everything that I've ever done. Find partners. This was when we launched Keep in Japan with Lawson's, who have over 100,000 outlets across the country, which was obviously very good for us and for our partners. Party with the Local, one of my companies, got a shout out from Bud Light when they launched their new events product and got loads and loads of downloads. Paranoid Fan is another one. This was then being featured by the Jacksonville Jaguars, which was about 50,000 downloads. If you're scaling up, buy nice swag, right? I'm like a walking billboard for a bunch of companies. If the t-shirts are nice or the hoodies are nice, I'll wear them all the time. So be nice to your users, and they'll be your billboards. Almost there. Learn what soft circling is. Learn what customer acquisition cost is. Learn what lifetime value is. Learn the lingo that VCs will use and the stuff that you need to be able to answer. There is a book called Venture Deals, which my colleague Brad Feld wrote. I recommend that you go out and buy, beg, borrow, steal, whatever, buy a copy. It has pretty much everything in there that you will need to know in terms of how VCs think and what they ask, because it is important to stand out, okay? When we see 1,000 pitches over a 2-month period, the ones that kind of smile and make us laugh or are interesting are good, right? So finally, do something that you care about. Do it with people that you really like. Bring great mentors on board. Get everything in writing. Hire a lawyer. Work with smart partners. Lose your shame. You're going to have to go out and do a lot of customer development interviews, which are hugely embarrassing. Have fun. Don't forget to sleep, right? This thing of like, oh, you have to work like 20-hour days is a load of shit, right? Sleep. And don't lose sight of what really matters as well, right? You have to have a life outside all of this, right? That's important as well. And as Bill and Ted once said, be excellent to one another. That's all.